always, any questions, just put them in the chat box, or if you're watching this after the fact, if you have any questions on YouTube or whatnot, just put them down in the comments section, and we will do our best to address them. So as always, want to express our appreciation for each of you, for every customer that we have. We don't exist as a company without customers that are utilizing the products that we provide. So we are very appreciative of that. So CapEx Sales is, we do this every week. We present on a specific topic. Our mission is to help our customers advance their careers. Mainly our customers are manufacturing engineers. So we want to help engineers be better at what they do, master their craft. And as a result of mastering their craft, that can then advance them in their organizations for greater responsibility, more pay, more accolades, anything, everything that comes along with improving your skill. We talk about it all the time, but it's really about adding value. So we as CapEx, we want to be adding value to our customers. That's our mission. Our motto is actually, building relationships that work, but it's also a secondary motto is always be adding value, because if we don't show up and add value, then there's no sense us even showing up. So that is our overall mission at CapEx Sales. Today, we're going to continue our series on managing capital projects. We're going to talk about blocking and tackling. So the blocking and tackling, this is the boring aspect of capital project management. It's the time when capital projects most often get off the tracks because people aren't paying attention. There's not a lot to do from a project management perspective. So you kind of lose sight of the project. And then when you wake up, you have, you're off the rails if you're not careful. So really important time for the project in order to ensure its success. Let's see here. All right. Okay. So again, CapEx Sales, what we do is we represent ATC Automation out of Cookeville, Tennessee. 85% of their business is with repeat customers. And I say that each and every time because if you've been involved in this industry, there are a lot of dead soldiers out there. And so ATC Automation, the customers that we have, they come back. Our mission for ATC is to build relationships that are long-term. They're not a short-term one and done. Their interest is long-term relationships with their customers. As a result, 85% of the business they do is with repeat customers, and that says a lot in our industry. Cincinnati Test Systems is the largest leak test company in the world. It always is awesome to say that because when I started with them, they were not the largest of anything. So they have continued to grow over the years. They've had great management, great leadership, and are now the largest leak test company in the world. Duquesne Plastic Joining, they are out of St. Charles, Illinois. Just a wonderful company as well. They've continued to grow. They were the first company. The guy that originally started Duquesne, he developed the sonics, and that's what they used to use to find. Well, they still use them today to find planes. That's the pinging. That he's the person that developed that, ironically enough. So those eventually turned into obviously ultrasonic welders. Plastic joining is their specialty. Hot plate, ultrasonic vibration. You name it, putting two pieces of plastics together, that's what they do. Symmetric is a division of Cincinnati Test Systems, but they're a little unique because they do high speed. They focus on high speed in process, test and data management, Industry 4.0. That's their world. And then Keller Technologies right here in Fort Mill, South Carolina, they have a comprehensive line of industrial air filtration. Dry and wet air filtration is what they do. All right, so blocking and tackling. Again, I'm really excited about this subject. I want to talk about your role as a capital project manager, what you need to stay focused on from a day-to-day perspective. Again, as you get into the project, this is the boring aspect of projects, but success is boring because it's doing the same thing over and over and over again, learning along the way, getting better at it, mastering that particular skill. So day to day, your number one responsibility as a capital project manager is to manage risk, right? So there are two aspects of this managing risk for a capital project. Number one is timing. You got to always be keeping your eye on the timeline. You don't want to lose sight of the project timing. And often this happens in the boring, I call them the summer months of a project, where you've kicked everything off, you've launched everything, you've done the design reviews, and the supplier that you've chosen is marching forward, creating the equipment that you all decided needed to be created. But there's a lot. I mean, this is the bulk of the work goes on during this phase, but we, again, because we aren't doing the work every day, can tend to lose sight. So we're going to talk about some key aspects to make sure that these things don't go off the rails. Timing and budget, right? So if your company exceeds the budget, if you exceed the budget, then your company's ability to receive or achieve the profitability targets for the product that you're manufacturing are not going to be achievable, because the equipment costs are going to reduce the profitability of your company or for that particular product. So it's important that the budget hits. So from a timing perspective, again, if you don't hit the timing, then your company is not going to be able to recognize revenue as promised. And every one of these capital projects is intended to be an increase in profitability for the business. There's no sense doing it if you're not going to take money, put it to use in service of the company to increase the company's revenue outside of solving a safety problem. Then it doesn't make sense to make a capital investment. And so it's important from a leadership perspective that you are helping the team to succeed. You're encouraging. So again, these are your day-to-day roles as a capital project manager. You're going to be leading, cheering that team on, helping them to succeed in this project, encouraging them, because it can get boring, right? So they don't want to be, the mundane is boring for them as well. So keeping them engaged is really important to ensure that you run through the tape and have a successful project. Communication, one-on-ones, group, email, text, minutes, etc. Your role is communication. You've got to keep everyone connected, everyone up to speed, from management to the janitor. Everyone needs to understand what's going on with this capital investment, because that's how you can ensure your success. That's how you get your name out there in your organization as someone that is responsible and on a mission to succeed. These one-on-ones that I mentioned here, extremely important. That is how you're going to build credibility with your team. So if you want to forge a team that's going to ensure the success of the overall project, you're going to do that with trust. You're going to do that with accountability. You're going to do that with empathy, right? So these one-on-one meetings, you want to understand and meet the person. Who are they? What's important to them? And then how can you make certain to help them achieve their goals along the way? So that's what you do, especially from a leadership perspective with these projects. So communication, one-on-ones, spending time with people, extremely important to ensure the success of the project long-term. Accountability. This is the most difficult, challenging aspect for capital project managers, holding people accountable, right? We want to be friendly. We want to be nice. We want to be good with everyone. So holding someone accountable for their commitments is a challenge. So if someone commits to something, it's important that we follow through in holding them accountable for what it is that they've committed to. And oftentimes, you don't want to shame people in meetings, but after a meeting is when you have the conversation with them about their commitment, understanding what's important to them, and just kind of revisiting that one-on-one discussion, getting to know the person, making sure that they trust you, and making sure that you empathize with them. That's how you can make a connection. All right, so you're also like a private investigator. You are investigating everything that everyone tells you, especially during these summer months, because the reason I put this in here is because multiple times I've had a supplier, I've had a customer that has worked with a supplier, and they're working with the supplier says, oh yeah, everything's great. Yeah, we're on schedule, blah, 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 blah. Well, the surprise visit to that supplier by the customer, only to realize that the supplier has nothing done. They don't even have the components necessary to put the equipment together, let alone the equipment already together and preparing for debug. So this has happened, again, multiple times over the course of my 20-year career, not from us, but from my customers experiencing that. And I've heard those horror stories. So it's really important that you trust but verify, right? So if someone's telling you something that is seems a little bit unreasonable for you, or you're like, no, I don't know, that's a little fishy, a little suspect, it's important that you investigate it. You follow through in ensuring that everyone is doing what they are supposed to do, because your responsibility is ensuring that this project gets done. You don't need to apologize for following up to make sure that people are doing what they said they're going to do, or what they said that they've already done. There's no harm in that. There's no shame in that. It's just important that you take that responsibility seriously and just don't believe everything that you're told. All right, you become an arbitrator. So what I mean by an arbitrator is your management, because your customer is asking, hey, can we get this 5 weeks early? Well, the supplier is saying, you know what, we were about 2 weeks behind. So now you've got a 7-week gap from what your management and your customer is suggesting. Well, you end up being the arbitrator in this whole scenario, because you have a relationship with both parties. You are the link that gets them together. So it's important that you, as the arbitrator, as the leader of this project, be the person that helps to negotiate and navigate those waters to understand, okay, what's preventing you from getting these 2 weeks back to the timeline that we'd originally committed to, and then understanding from a management perspective, is this really necessary, or are we just jumping through hoops for an unreasonable customer because they have the power to throw their weight around, and that's oftentimes when you're dealing with a Ford and a GM and companies like that. You know, they like to throw around their power, and it may or may not be necessary or justified in the process. So not to say that it always isn't, but sometimes that is the case. So it's important that you, as a capital project manager, negotiate and work between the two companies to make sure that success for all parties and the relationship is maintained, right? So you've got a relationship with both, and if you do this well, again, it's going to help elevate you and your status in your organization. Okay, so that's the day-to-day responsibilities that you're going to have. You're going to manage risk. You're going to lead your team. You're going to communicate often with your team. You're going to hold people accountable. You're going to be a private investigator, understand and uncover and make sure that everyone's doing what they say they're doing. And then you're going to be an arbitrator when there are issues that come up. Blocking and tackling. Okay, so I want to talk about so there are several phases that we're going to talk about here in these projects. So you got the dating phase, is when you are just getting to know the project. It just started and it's something new and everyone's excited about it, right? There's a lot of energy that goes on with the dating phase. And then you get married and you got the honeymoon phase, right? So you got the honeymoon phase and everyone's still excited. You made a commitment and you followed through on that commitment and you're super excited about that. And then there's the marriage phase of the project. And we're going to talk about the marriage phase and how, that can be the more challenging. That's kind of where the rubber meets the road. That's where the work begins, because, marriage is work. If you're married, you know that in order to maintain a strong relationship, it's work. You got to work for each other. So the marriage phase, and then you got the parenting phase. So oftentimes you get married and then eventually a lot of couples have kids. And so now you got the parenting phase, which is a whole different responsibility beyond what you have experienced in the past. So that's kind of the phases that you have from a project perspective, and specifically as it relates to a supplier that you've selected. So, all right, so the blocking and tackling, this is the boring stuff of every project. So the dating phase, you have the discovery, the giddiness of the overall project and the excitement and energy associated with it. Then you start to define it. Okay, what is this project? What is success? This is where you're creating that vision for the project and really getting clear on what the expectations, what the needs are, and making sure that you're interviewing everyone so that their ideas are in the project as you're defining it. It's again, full of energy, full of possibility. There's a lot of excitement about the project. And then you get down to the planning, right? So the planning, okay, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. You start to put that timeline together, and then you're engaging other people out there in industry, in your organization, engaging people to get them involved in helping to ensure the success of this project. So that's the dating phase. So your role as a project manager during this. So, I put the dating phase in the wrong, or I put the phases in the wrong segment. So sorry about that. I just added this slide. So because I wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page for the dating phase or for the phases. Okay, so dating phases. So we have excitement about the new project. Honeymoon phase, we have the supplier selection, kind of a love fest, right? Everyone who we're excited about the project moving forward. We have made the relationship official. So the marriage phase, now the work begins, as I mentioned, the parenting phase. So we have to mature, we have to make decisions, we have to offer guidance to ensure that the project is a success. So this is, if you think of it, relating to birthing a machine. So you birth a machine and you got to make sure that that machine works the way it's supposed to work and is functioning the way it's supposed to function as promised from everyone in the project. And then you've got to be engaging. Okay. All right. So dating phase, here are your responsibilities. CPM, the capital project manager's key actions. You got to immerse yourself for understanding. You have to understand the product. You have to understand the process. You have to understand from a supplier's perspective, the process, right? So they can teach you about the process. You teach them about the product. Really important that you have that mutual exchange of knowledge during this dating phase. It's going to help you be successful long-term because you clearly understand the product as well as the process. And as an engineer, that's critical. The timing, what is really critical as it relates to timing to ensure the success and implementation of the project. Status. So what's the funding status? What's the design status? Where's this going to be located? Where are you going to install the equipment? And then you really get clear on how to succeed. So, what is success for this capital project? That's when you create the vision casting, right? So the immersion for understanding then allows you the ability to boil that down into casting the vision for the overall project. Vision casting is critical for your success of a project because that gets everyone excited and energized about the project. Team selection, really important that we have this because again, dating phase, so you're gonna bring in the quality engineer, the maintenance lead that's gonna help, the product engineer. So there's gonna be a number of people that you're gonna have on that team. So ideally, you're able to select that team and put that together by hand, and it's just not all handed to you. Okay, so blocking and tackling. So this is the honeymoon phase. We want to establish rapport, right? So we've got the dating phase. So now we want to establish rapport. Hey, this is why we want to work together, why you want to work with me. This is, I know my stuff. So you want to communicate expectations during the honeymoon phase. Here, I want to be clear on what my vision is for this marriage, for this relationship. You want to do that with the team members that are on your direct team in your company. You want to do it with all the suppliers. You want to clearly communicate to them, here are the expectations that we have for this project. You're going to select a partner. So this happens during the honeymoon phase. And then you're going to set a communication rhythm. Extremely important for success in capital project. Again, it all comes down to communication, and communication is about managing the timeline, managing the risks, understanding the risks that you've got out there, and making sure that everyone is trusting you, that you're not going to bash them over the head with whatever it is that they communicate to you. So you set that rhythm, and then you want to clear the path for success. What is going to prevent your company from being successful, or you from being successful as a company on this project? So you want to clear the path to eliminate those risks and ensure your success. So during the honeymoon phase, capital project managers' key actions are build relationships. You want to use emotional intelligence. If you've forgotten, emotional intelligence is our ability to empathize with another human being. We put ourselves in another person's shoes. We see them, we feel them, we understand them as a result of putting ourselves in their shoes, and then we can relate and connect with them. Really important. If you want to succeed and you don't understand what emotional intelligence is, I highly encourage you to study it and begin to implement it. It was the biggest game changer for me. I was an engineer at Cummins Engine Company. I was a manufacturing engineer and got started in there, and I was going to just light the world on fire as a wet behind the ears, manufacturing engineer, and I was failing. I was getting written up all the time. They were a union facility. I was getting written up. I was struggling with relationships with the people on the assembly lines or on the machining lines. Back then, I was responsible for machining lines. And so my relationships were not healthy. And then I found a book. It's called Working with Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. I picked that book up, I devoured it, and I began to implement everything that he talked about. And it completely changed the relationships that I had. And I've been building on that ever since personally, because I realized how important it was to be able to empathize, connect, and serve another person. So that is what emotional intelligence is all about. We want to be able to clearly articulate our expectations. So as a capital project manager during the honeymoon phases, here's what we expect. Not compromising, not giving in, saying here are the expectations to ensure that we have success on this project long term. Next, we want to lead the processes, right? So we got to lead the processes. So lead every aspect of these processes through this honeymoon phase. So when I talk about the processes, I'm talking about the process of creating a specification. I'm talking about the process of determining what the right supplier is going to be. And then I'm talking about the process of selecting a supplier. And then I'm talking about the process of kicking off a project. So that is what you want to be focused on during these honeymoon phases. Okay, so the marriage phase. Now, this is where the real work begins, and embrace the suck. Now, I'm not saying or suggesting that marriage sucks. What I'm saying is that it is work. And during this phase, our projects are work. So we need to be prepared to embrace the work associated with the project. So we want to be reminding people of the vision. So we got to remind the team, this is why we're doing this. This is what we're focused on accomplishing. Keep them engaged in that process. Continually communicate expectations. We want to always be, reminding people of what the expectations are. And if they commit to something, making sure that they're held accountable to meeting those expectations that they have committed to. We want to follow up. And I should have added here, follow through. So we want to follow up on everything, and we want to follow through on everything. It's extremely important. It doesn't matter anything in life that you want to be successful at. You want to follow up. You say, hey, I need this. You follow up. You don't get it, you follow up again. You don't get it, you follow up again. Always follow up, and follow through. Next is accountability. You want to make certain that you're holding people accountable, like I mentioned just 2 bullets ago. Keep management informed. This is how you can differentiate yourself in your organization. This is how you can get noticed. And again, we want to help you advance your career, all right? And so if you are not helping management understand what's going on with the capital that they authorize to spend, then that's on you. Then there could be a void for them. They don't know what's going on. So if something happens and they are unaware of it, they're going to blame it on you. You're going to get thrown under the bus. So it's really important that you engage management and keep them posted on what's going on with the project. All right. Next, during the management phase, capital project managers, key actions for marriage phase: be a cheerleader, encourage people, stay excited and energized about the project. I know some people are like, oh, that's just not me. Well, it doesn't matter if it's you or not. If you want to succeed as a capital project manager, you've got to cheer people on. You've got to be someone that supports the overall cause, supports the individuals, and helps to, again, maintain, push them, encourage them to move forward. You got to read between the lines. So when people are not being honest and open with you, you got to be able to step back and say, does that make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, you really need to investigate further. So don't hesitate, don't be shy, don't be embarrassed to read between the lines. But you got to be careful too, is don't make assumptions. What they say about assumptions, but or assume, I think it is. But so you can't necessarily, I don't want you to make assumptions, but I definitely want you to don't just take things at face value. When someone says something, you might want to follow up just to confirm, especially if it sounds a little bit outlandish or not possible given the time frame. So you want to keep the team focused. Again, here's what we're doing, here's the mission, here's why we're doing it, and keeping them moving forward during this particular phase. The parenting phase, this is that responsibility, that follow through phase. So you want to execute the runoff plan during this phase. You want to confirm, because you birthed this project, right? So you want to execute the runoff plan. You're going to confirm the quality. It's producing as it's supposed to. You want to train people, operators and maintenance. You want to make sure that the plant is ready. Is everyone ready at the plant to accept this equipment? You want to make sure that you're coordinating shipment. I can't tell you how many times this happens where people are not coordinating the shipment and it's supposed to be there on a certain day, but nothing got done to coordinate that. You want to coordinate commissioning in your facility. How's it going to get up? How's it going to get set in place? How's everything going to happen as far as that goes? That's part of that plant readiness program, but the commissioning is an important aspect of this parenting phase. Okay, capital project manager, key actions during the parenting phase. You want to be very engaged. It's so important. You know, if you're a disengaged parent, heaven only knows what's going to happen with your kids, right? It's just, you're leaving it to chance. You do not want to leave anything to chance as it relates to the project during this phase. You want to stay engaged, stay focused, make sure everyone's on the same page, because it is crucial that nothing gets dropped, because if it does, it's going to impact every person's ability to be successful on the project. So very important. So you want to stay engaged. You want to pay attention to those details, right? Every aspect of it, what's going on, what's the status, checking in on things. The details matter during this phase, because this is where it all comes together. So you want to be prepared to push back. Someone is trying to pull something over on you. Someone's not accepting something that needs to happen. Push back and be prepared to push back. Not in a mean way, but in a way that's relevant and appropriate for ensuring success for the project. Again, it's not from a personal perspective. It's, hey, we want to be successful. We made a commitment to deliver this equipment, this project for our company, and we're going to follow through on that commitment. So over communicate expectations. Again, it's sharing that vision, talking about where we're going, what we're doing, what we're up to. This is, again, it can be boring. You want to leave with the bullhorn, again, you want to let everyone know, here's what we're doing, here's where we're going, here's what we expect. Shout from the rooftops, I like to say. Okay, so during the project overall, the blocking and tackling, the boring aspects of a project, again, I've said it 10 times during this conversation, communication techniques. Communication matters. So we're going to talk about some techniques, some strategies for you. Weekly team meetings. Do this. Do it. Every week, get together, face-to-face. Oh, we don't need to. We're 15 weeks in. Everything's already launched. Don't listen to the naysayers. Have the meetings. Have the discipline. Discipline yourself to follow through. This is the boring stuff that's going to differentiate you from your peers, because you followed through and you made them happen. You want to review priorities for each person during every one of these meetings. Who's responsible for what? Did they follow through? When's it going to be due? What's the next action? We got a template for this as well here in a couple of slides. Weekly supplier conference calls, 30 minutes. So review the open issues list, review the timeline, confirm the timeline, confirm the timeline, confirm the timeline. Anything going to prevent us from being successful. If you establish these relationships with your supplier, they're going to willingly put their hand up, especially if they're responsible and a mature supplier. They're going to stand up and say, hey, we are off course. We overcommitted. We expected the delivery for this Promise Press to be 10 weeks, but it turns out it's going to be 42 weeks. I don't know if you ever ordered a Promise Press, but it's always like, 100 weeks to get the thing. So that's an area where, gosh, we expected something and we're not going to get it in when we wanted to. What are the alternatives? Do we have one inside? So that's when you begin to do that work to follow through to do whatever you need to do to get this project back on track, because that is your role. Remember, manage the calendar, manage the money. Manage the calendar, manage the money. So if you're having these weekly supplier conference calls and you have a strong relationship with your supplier and they are willing to admit when something is off track, that gives you the opportunity as quickly as possible to begin to look for alternatives and find ways to get the project back on track. So that's your mission. Meeting minutes. Every meeting. It is boring. Again, I know it sucks, but you got to do meeting minutes every time you get together so that everyone is on the same page with responsibility. So that 20 weeks down the road, when someone says, you didn't say that, you can go back and say, as a matter of fact, right here it is in our published meeting minutes. If you don't do it, you're not going to have it, and you'll have zero recourse for whatever it is that didn't get done, that was supposed to get done, that everyone agreed was going to get done. So it's important that you do that. Got to do those minutes every time, just a brief summary. Here are the actions. Here's the timing. Here's what we talked about. And then you want to make sure that you have weekly calls with purchasing. I know this is annoys your purchasing people, but I don't care. Your purchasing people need to make sure that you've got the appropriate debug and runoff parts. And if you don't have them, it's on them. And you got to make sure it's on them. And the way you make sure it's on them is you call them every week. You connect with them every week and say, where are my parts? Where are my parts? Where are my parts? Understand it. And then you give that report back to the team so that they understand. And then you make certain to include that in your executive summary so that purchasing doesn't get off scot-free if they are not admitting or not delivering on the parts that they're supposed to deliver. Again, I've been doing this for 20 years. The biggest failure point is having parts to debug and run off equipment. And it's because the purchasing people don't follow through on their role. They don't report to you. They're not accountable to you. But if you put it in the executive summary as a risk and you report on it regularly, now it elevates it to management. Well, purchasing is definitely accountable to management. So if they understand that they are holding up the show, causing issues, going to be potentially jeopardizing the success of the project, then they're going to be more likely to follow through and do what they need to do. So again, sure, it's CYA at some level, but at the end of the day, I'm just sharing with you the experience that I've had in over 500 projects and some of the challenges that you're going to face, or some of the more common challenges you're going to face. And it's definitely not having parts. So if you're communicating with management during this executive summary and updating it on a regular basis, then you're going to help ensure success from a communications perspective in particular. And again, you're going to advance your career because your career will advance as a result of your communication and ability to connect, not necessarily your heads down work. That's important, but the way that you articulate what's going on is going to be even more important in your organization. Now, tools of the trade. So again, we've talked about executive summary, the importance of executive summary and creating that simple document that's keeping everyone informed as to what the status is of the project. You want to have that kickoff meeting. Every time you have a project, you want to make sure that you're getting together face-to-face with your suppliers and you're saying, here's what we're going to do, making sure that everyone's on the same page before you ever do anything. Really important. Open issues list. You want to make sure you're talking about the issue. So you list the issue, you list the next action, you identify who is responsible. So you're assigning this issue to someone, and you're going to put a due date on it, and you're going to color code it. And so red, yellow, green. What is the status based on red, yellow, green? Very simple to do. Again, most people, they don't do it because simple is easy not to do as well. Project timeline. Each week, you got to ask, has anything impacted the timeline? Has anything impacted the timeline? You got to ask that of your team. You got to ask it of product design. You've got to ask it of your suppliers as well. Do not be shy in understanding. Do not put your head in the sand and hope things are going to be okay. You've got to ask the questions. You've got to stay focused. You've got to obsess over anything that's going to affect your timeline. And then you got to work on resolving it too when it does come up, because it will come up. So you want to use web conferencing software. I put this together. Zoom wasn't even something that we use very often. Now everyone seems to be using it. We're using it right now. So Zoom is another tool, but GoToMeeting, WebEx, Zoom, whatever you choose to use as a company. FTP site. So a central file storage for these large files that you're going to be sending back and forth. Just have a folder that is safe for both companies to use and share information. You want to make sure that you've got templates, because you don't want to make work for yourself. The mission here isn't to have a bunch of busy work. So create templates, use templated open issues lists, use project timelines so that you've created already, and just leverage those already created templates to help you be more efficient in managing the project. So those are some tools of the trade that you can use to help manage the project. All right, that weekly rhythm. So we're going to identify kind of what that weekly rhythm of conversation is all about. Successful project management does not mean heroic acts or big decisions. It's doing the simple stuff every day, day in, day out, consistently. Success is boring. So consistency, weekly calls, no matter what. Do not let people talk you out of having a weekly call unless you get together face to face instead of having a weekly call. It's easy to do. Oh, I got nothing to report this week. Sure enough, what happens? You get on the phone for the weekly call that you insist on happening, and someone says, oh, by the way, could cost time. It could cost money. So it's important that those things get addressed as quickly as possible to minimize the impact on the project and the commitments for utilizing this capital efficiently. You got to follow up on team member commitments. So that's part of the weekly rhythm as well. And then, so here's how you do it. So Monday, you have your call with your supplier. And then on Tuesday, you have your team meeting. And then on Wednesday, you have purchasing check-in. And then on Thursday, you have a design check-in. And then Friday, you've got open. So again, it's just a regular communication rhythm that you're going to get in. And you just do it. You do it, and you do it, and you do it until there's no longer any reason to do it because the project has been fully executed and successful. Here are some common mistakes. Failure to communicate issues immediately. I addressed this just a couple of slides ago. Really important that you understand product design changes. What's the impact going to be for the equipment that you are manufacturing? What is the impact going to be on the machining suppliers that are going to be supplying the debug and runoff parts? What are the project delays or consequences associated with issues that are out there? What are the necessary changes from a builder perspective that need to be addressed or are causing issues? Maybe they plan to do it one way, turns out it didn't work that way, so they're going to have to go back to the drawing board, reprocess the equipment, and that's going to cause a delay. What's the impact? Not assigning blame, just understanding the impact. Critically important and common, just a common mistake. Again, people bury their head in the sand. They pretend like things are hunky-dory when the reality is they are not. Okay, so failure to monitor the timeline. Again, so important. Just check on it on a regular basis. Make sure you understand clearly and go and check on those suppliers. So they said that it was halfway built. Fly there, drive there, go there, check on it. Is it halfway built? Is it where they said it was? You got to trust but verify in all of your relationships as it relates, well, all of your vendor customer type of relationships. Failure to follow up on debug parts. And then this is, again, you get to the runoff and you're like, oh, we don't have any parts. The equipment isn't ready. We didn't have debug parts as well. I've seen it 100 times in my career. Failure to publish meeting minutes. So not having the discipline to record those minutes. We know we had the conversation, but because there aren't any minutes, there's no supporting evidence. The person that caused the problem or the company or whatever issues are not held accountable because we don't have any recourse because nothing was recorded. Failure to let the customer know of delays. So your customer needs to understand delays. If you are a supplier, it's important that your customer understand delays. Don't bury this stuff. The longer that you hold off in communicating problems, the bigger the problem is going to be when it gets communicated. Because as people begin to uncover how we got to where we are and they discover that you've been burying this for 6 weeks, knowing it's an issue, that's going to create a real problem, a real trust issue in your relationship. So if you want to maintain trust in your relationships, communicate problems immediately. That's how you maintain trust in a relationship, not hiding it, not trying to find a way around it, not trying to hope it goes away. You've got to address issues immediately. And then failure to keep stakeholders up to date. So management doesn't know what's going on. There have been delays, there have been problems. People haven't been getting you what you need to be successful. And then all of a sudden, the project is late, it's over budget, there are major issues. Management's going to blame you because they don't have any outside information shared with them that has identified anyone other than you to blame, because the buck stops with you if you are a capital project manager. But you got to keep people informed in order to get their support when necessary. All right, so those are the common mistakes. Any questions? Any questions out there? I rifled through that pretty quick. Okay, the next CapEx IndustryCast webinar, we're going to talk about running through the tape. When I say running through the tape, we're going to talk about how to ensure that you get the runoff completed. You ensure that you're ready to get the equipment installed, that you install it properly in your facility. So this is one of the final aspects of your project. So we'll be talking about that on July 15th. If you have any questions, again, we thank you for your business. We're so grateful for the opportunity to serve our customers. So Mike Dorsey is in South Carolina, Chris Mullins in Eastern North Carolina, as well as Eastern Virginia. And then we have Adam Hooper is Western North Carolina, and he is involved in select accounts there in the South Carolina upstate. Appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks so much for your business. Any questions? Ask them below. www.capexsales.com. See you later.